Today's edition of the Spotrac podcast is presented by BetterEdge. Visit betteredge.com today or download the app in the iOS App Store. Check out the new flash markets, prediction markets, one of the biggest rages in all of sports betting. Use code Spotrac for $20 at registration. That's SPOTRAC. And visit betteredge.com today. My name is Mike Giannetti. It is Friday, October 24th. We took a little bit extra time to record on this second of the week. A, because the NBA broke yesterday for a couple hours, and B, because we are in MLB offseason mode, despite the fact that the World Series begins tonight. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but I'm 25 offseason previews deep into Major League Baseball, just to give you a little transparency. So look for those early next week as the World Series gets into full swing. Hopefully it's not done by then. But all 30 teams fully detailed with tax information, free agents, option decisions, trade candidates, the works. I went all arbitration estimates in terms of what those players should cost. And then if you haven't looked yet on Major League Baseball on the Spotrac system, we are flipped to 2026, and our tax information is projecting opening day tax payrolls with arbitration included, with pre-arbitration estimates for the 40-man roster players in that regard. So we are in full 2026 mode for the most part, but we're going to take time to talk about the World Series. And by the way, we still got to get to awards for this past season, which are going to have some financial ramifications. Dan Soma's been tracking that closely. We've got some last-minute incentives to tie up. Many of these things are attached to options, which will have decisions within the next 2 weeks. There's 3-4 dozen decisions. Most of them are pretty cut and dry. There's a couple of sticklers out there. My Mets have a couple of those, as you might have heard already, but there are plenty of 2025 baseball notes to get to before we officially flip the switch, but look for those previews coming in 2026 fashion. Here's the deal. I'm going to talk a little bit NFL candidates because the trade deadline is November 4th. It is Friday, October 24th, and the hot stove is steaming. New names every morning. Every single time I wake up, there's a new name. We're adding all those names to a trade candidate view, which I will display for those of you watching in just a few moments. We'll go through that trade candidate system so you can understand what the numbers mean, and hopefully it helps you understand just what it's going to take on a weekly basis to acquire a player for your special team and vice versa. And then I'm going to go even deeper and open up our trade machine for those of you watching, put together a fake trade, one that I think actually might have some legs in the next couple of days here, show you how that works, show you how you can view the financial impact, the ramifications, see how it all works, and then share it to the socials pretty quickly thereafter. So that's the first segment. And then I wrote a piece this morning once rosters were finalized regarding those World Series teams. The 26-man rosters have officially been announced for both the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. Not really any surprises, but we do have the financial ramifications of those now. So I put a piece up that talks 2025 Dodgers and Blue Jays, breaks down these World Series rosters, including how these players got there, pending free agents, the massive contracts to be watching this over the next week or so, many of which some you might not remember, because the Dodgers have so many large contracts that by the time you get to the 33rd or 4th at the list, you may forget exactly what happened just a few months back in February and March. So we'll go through that as well on the back end of the show. And of course, within, I think Monday's show, we'll have Keith Smith on, not only to talk about the actual opening of the NBA and some interesting storylines, certainly Victor Wembanyama's massive opening day performance, but I've given him some homework in terms of some next contracts for NBA players. And obviously we'll get his thoughts on where things stand with the Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier mafia gambling ring news bomb that was dropped yesterday from the FBI straight to the NBA's lap. So that'll be coming Monday, and hopefully there's some more information to get to regarding that. Let's talk NFL. All right, we're looking at a current NFL trade candidate tracker that we added this year, just about a month ago now, and have continued to sort of toggle this thing and improve it based on our own recommendations, some suggestions from the socials, and all of that. Please continue to do that, by the way. We love feedback. It's a pretty deep list, all right? Like I said, every morning I wake up, I see a new name popping around from a beat reporter, from the players themselves, right? A couple of social unfollows, which is always the breadcrumbs you try to track this time of year. It's a deep name, and we're starting to get some bigger names at the top. Not likely trade candidates. I think Max Crosby has already been sort of ruled out by the Raiders themselves. That's not going to stop teams from calling. All right. And I'm not going to keep him off of this very loose list because it does have some impact going forward with the future allocation side of it. So what we're looking at here is, like I said, a long list of candidates, obviously their current team and position. This was the 2025 cap hit coming into the season. So what they currently account for on the books for their current team. And then we get into the tradable numbers here. So what's focused on the default column here is based on week 9, because we did have a week 8 game last night. Based on week 9, 10 weeks of league year remaining, here's what it would take. Here's what actually transfer to the new team in terms of new cash and cap hit for the remainder of 2025. So if you can swindle Max Crosby out of the Raiders' hands over the course of the next few days, you can have him for $18.5 million for the rest of the year. Now, there's plenty more to come after that, but we're giving you the 2025 current year snapshot version, literally in real time, based on the day of the week and the week of the league year in terms of base salary, per game active bonus, and anything else that would transfer over to the new team per trade. And then obviously these columns represent the dead cap that would stay with the current team. So if Kirk Cousins were to be traded right now away from the Atlanta Falcons, it would be a 24 and change cap hit for 2025 and 2025 million stuck in 2026. That's the going rate. Max Crosby, 19 and change, 5.1 next year. We talked about how that's a ridiculously tradable contract because of the lack of proration and therefore dead cap. That's why things got pretty excitable for a couple minutes there on the socials when the Cowboys were reportedly looking into a Max Crosby conversation. I don't think we're done with the Cowboys. We'll get to them in a few minutes, but every name that's been mentioned, if you have names that your current team is being floated out there with, let me know. I'm happy to add whoever we need to this list to make it full, complete, and give you the full financial picture as to how this thing's going to work over the course of not just right now, but up until that 11/4 deadline. And then we'll keep this active over the off season so that you can see what it looks like with a pre-June 1st trade before the league year, at the start of the league year in 2026 for some of these players that may not stick with their current teams at that point in time. So we're going to have an in-season and an off-season version of this. By the way, we have this with Major League Baseball right now. So if you're thinking about players that may be on the move inside of current contracts in baseball this offseason, Dan Soman has done the work to update players that are off-season trade candidates for respective baseball teams heading into the winter here. Go ahead and check that out. It's just simply spotrac.com/MLB/trade candidates if you can't find it in the navigation. So I think this is getting pretty useful. We're going to continue to build this out. I can tell you right now, one of the things on the wish list, and hopefully it becomes a reality here soon, is you can see this information right now. I want to be able to give you the full traded view. So AJ Brown has multiple years left, as you can see here, with 114 million. There's going to be at some point in time, I believe, a button here that says view the traded contract. Something will pop up, something will slide down, some kind of fanciness will happen that will show you exactly what AJ Brown's contract would look like on a new team, not only this year, but going forward as well. So you can get the full picture of what your team would be acquiring for not just this year or today, but also going forward. So that's on the wish list. But any thoughts, any recommendations, any players we're missing, shoot me at Spotrac on all the socials, and we'll get things updated and change as quickly as possible. Let's go a little deeper. I mentioned the Cowboys. If you click that big red proposed trade button, you are now within the NFL trade machine on Spotrac. You select a couple of teams. I'm going to play with Dallas and Cincinnati, two teams that I think have been linked up in recent rumors. I start that trade here, and I'm inside the system. It's pretty simple stuff. All right. So the name to watch, I think, is Logan Wilson. He's an inside linebacker. That seems to be Dallas's biggest need. I simply click here, send him to Dallas. Things start to populate in the results box. I flip over to Dallas, and I don't think they're going to send a player back here. I think it's just going to be probably a later round pick. So let's use that 2026 fifth round pick that they have on the books. And I have these updated to the best of my ability every single time a trade happens. We have a system that updates draft picks going forward. So I assume that this fifth round pick is available to be traded right now. I'm going to send that back to Cincinnati for Logan Wilson. This is a basic financial view of what would happen here: dead cap and traded cap, dead cap and traded acquired cap. If you want to get fancier, there's a bigger version of this, which shows cost savings, cap savings. If there were future years on Logan Wilson's contract, you'd see those ramifications as well. But we kind of give you the simple and the advanced version of what the money looks like. And then if you're happy, if you think this is something that you want to show to the world, click that button right there, and it'll create a screenshot, download it onto your phone, onto your computer, wherever you're doing the work. And you can quickly simply add that to a tweet, add that to a post, and push it out to the world and brag about how you were dead on with the Logan Wilson to the Dallas Cowboys for a fifth round pick trade in the coming days, if that actually comes to fruition. So you can get fancy here. You can certainly use multiple players, multiple draft picks. You can use 3 teams, though that's uber rare in the NFL. But obviously, we have an NBA version of this. We have a baseball version of this that's sort of in beta mode. And we're going to continue to refine these as well. You can also download this as an app on the iOS App Store, both NBA and NFL versions of this. So if you want to play with a little bit more consistency on your mobile devices, go ahead and download those. But that's the nuts and bolts of what we're doing over here at Spotrac as we approach the deadline. These can all be found under the transactions page, again, with the trade candidate view and the full proposed view as well. So we'll see what comes to fruition in terms of some of these actual moves. But feel free to come in here and build with the sandbox and play a little bit and push it out to the world and try to guess what's going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. Let's get to some baseball. All right. My latest piece on Spotrac.com is the World Series financials piece. And it's only this late because I just got the rosters minutes ago. So I kind of had the container built and what I wanted to say thought out, but I didn't have the actual rosters. And there were certainly a couple of minor surprises, certainly with both rosters. Bo Bichette was officially added to the Blue Jays roster, and a couple of relievers that I wasn't expecting were added to the Dodgers roster late in the game. That doesn't, by the way, include Clayton Kershaw, who is on this 26-man roster for the Dodgers throughout what will be his last week of Major League Baseball, unfortunately. So here's how we broke this down. You can certainly go find the full view on Spotrac.com right on the homepage. I took the full tax payrolls of these teams and kind of broke them down simply here, right? So the Blue Jays brought the 5th highest payroll this year. It's one of their highest payrolls in franchise history, approaching 280 according to our data. And obviously, it holds no candle to what the Dodgers have done, which is an estimated $417 million. And that's actual cash payroll based on the tax salaries. They're gonna pay about $170 million additional from the tax bill that comes with this, which means it's about a $585 million roster this year. And if you've seen the latest Forbes and Sportico revenue streams for Major League Baseball teams, it's not even a blip on their radar. All right. They're still going to profit hundreds of millions of dollars, especially now that they're back in the World Series and are the odds on favorite to win it again. So they're printing money and they're spending money. That's why I think on the last episode, and probably on a lot of podcasts that you've been listening to, if you follow baseball closely, there's not a lot of people too mad with the Dodgers. Okay. Because what would be worse, way worse, is a team printing this kind of money because they're in a major market and not going all in. Now you can complain about the deferred payments, you can complain about a lot of things, but this is a team spending about 80% of its revenue, okay, annually. And yes, they are somewhat unbeatable now in their second straight World Series, I think 5th in 9 years. So it is a real Dodgers dynasty in terms of major success, not exactly World Series win success, but if they are a back-to-back winner in the next week or so, there'll be a lot more people complaining. There'll be a lot of people saying, though, they have earned this. They have literally paid the dollars and cents for the best players in baseball, for the best starting pitchers, at least at this time of year in baseball. And it stinks if you follow a small market team. It stinks if one of your mid or large market teams doesn't put in this kind of financial effort, but it's not for everybody. And they're breaking zero rules to do what they're doing, but they have a 100 and I think $30 million advantage. Yeah, 125 on just their 26-man roster that they'll put out tonight, Friday night, against the Blue Jays. It's 184 million versus 309 million for just the 26-man roster that will be existing on the field and on the bench and in the bullpen for the Dodgers versus the Blue Jays to start the World Series. So you can see where things break down here in terms of pitchers and batters for transparency. I just made Ohtani's salary a batter for both of these payrolls versus just having a two-way player line like we've done with some other situations. But he's going to hit a hell of a lot more than he pitches over the course of the next week or so. So we'll designate him as a DH first and a pitcher when he gets there. But these are two teams that are pot invested, and we'll get to some of the large contracts in a moment here, but they're pot invested in basically every regard. The pitchers for the Toronto Blue Jays, as you'll see here, are of the older, right? Gausman, Bassett, Scherzer. These are older pitchers. Even Bieber's north of 30 now. They've gone a different route. Not that Snell and Glasnow and Kershaw are young bucks, but you can understand that once you see where these acquired versus are, there's a pretty good mix on both of these teams of draft and develop, use the international pool, but also go out there and acquire players that are worth a damn to you and pay them well to make them happy so that when things like this happen, it feels like the greatest decision they've ever made. And that is what you've got a lot of players right now thinking about, especially in Toronto, who, you know, from a free agent perspective, had other options and now have a real hook to hang their hats on, especially going out to the open market this year and trying to keep themselves at this high of a level going forward, something the Dodgers have been able to do fantastically over the past 5 off seasons, maybe even longer than that. All right, so this is available for payroll breakdowns. You see I've got the 26-man rosters broken down by their tax salary here. I obviously classified Shohei with the batters, but as a TWP for optics purposes here. But it's a pretty simple breakdown. Everybody's got a couple of high-paid players. There's a bunch of minimum guys on both sides. You know, the Trey Yuseviches of the world making less than $60,000 because of his prorated salary when he was called up so late. This is the best story of the World Series. And this guy's going to start day one home in Toronto, and he was just called up, contract purchased not more than a couple of months ago. It is a dream scenario, and we'll see if it can be a dream first-round victory for him and the Blue Jays tonight. Here's how they're built. This is one of my favorite things to do. We do it team by team throughout the site. But it's a fairly even slate, as I sort of alluded to. Now, the Dodgers have a few more international pieces. This is just a 26-man roster. There's a 40-man version on Spotrac available for those who want to go and seek that out. But just what these 26-man rosters look like, 4 versus 5 in terms of draft and develop. A lot of trade pieces here, a lot of free agent pieces here. A couple of players claimed on waivers for the Blue Jays. One of them starting at third base, by the way. And then Jack Dreyer, our reliever for the Dodgers, remains the only UDFA to join this World Series roster, which I thought was super interesting as we head into game 1 tonight. The large contracts, they're mostly Dodgers. I only did the top 5. I would have had to go top 7 to get the George Springer and get another Blue Jays player on this roster, but it's Ohtani, it's Guerrero, it's Betts, it's Yamamoto, and it's Snell. I break down the deferred information here if you want to see that. We are about to launch, by the way, a new deferred payment tool for Major League Baseball on Spotrac that not only talks about what's been deferred, but what kind of tax savings comes with those deferrals. You can see the year-by-year payment structure for each of these players that have deferred contracts. And by the way, we rank on the Dodgers for this. There are multitudes of teams that have deferred payments right now, and you'll be able to see team by team how things are kind of shelled out, not only right now, but going forward into the 2030s and 2040s for some of these deferred payments. So that's coming soon, and we'll certainly push those out to the socials when that's available. Upcoming decisions is the final piece of this little puzzle here, which is options, free agents. Just quickly summarizing here. By the way, these will be borne out in much more detail on those off-season previews that I teased in the intro. So coming soon for both these teams and all 30 Major League Baseball teams. Shortstop Bo Bichette. I'm not sure if he's going to be the game 1 starter at shortstop. He hasn't played in a long time due to injury. but he did make this game one roster. He's a pending free agent. He's arguably the best infielder available, certainly middle infielder available. We've got him close to $200 million over 8 years on a market value. We'll see. He's been inconsistent, but he's had really nice back-to-back seasons in Toronto here. He's been one of the reasons that the Blue Jays have been able to push it to the next level from a win standpoint. Obviously, retaining makes the most sense here, but the shortstop gets to the open market. It only takes one Dansby Swanson Cubs contract to pry them away from a team they probably should have stayed with, because the Braves still don't have a shortstop after losing Dansby Swanson. You know the Toronto Blue Jays don't want to get in that scenario, but he's in bidding war territory. Let's put it that way. If he's allowed to walk this winter, and it's getting to that point at this point in time. Shane Bieber's got a player option. Again, a player they should retain because he has done well by them, and they did well by him in terms of rehabbing him back to health, giving him a decent option for next year, which is now $16 million. We'll see where that lands. And then for the Dodgers, it's kind of Max Muncy and nobody else. Muncy has a $10 million club option. There's no buyout. It's not a huge price. He's basically a $14 million player in our system. So there's value with it. It's just, do the Dodgers want to continue this? He has garnered some injuries over the past couple of seasons, and 2 kind of decent ones this year that kept him out for about 33% of the season. Nice player, productive player. They just might have to turn that position over. That's all. And if they decide to do that and save themselves some money, nobody's going to blame them. Muncy will get a nice 2 to 3 year deal in the open market. He's still got a multi-year guarantee out there for him. And that's the one to watch in terms of where the Dodgers are heading over the course of the next few months. But neither of these teams have daunting tasks. Obviously, replacing a starting shortstop for the Blue Jays would be difficult, as we've talked about. But I don't think these teams have massive decisions ahead of them, which is good, because you want good teams to stay good in this league so that we have a bit of relevancy to take with us into the offseason and into next March as we think about 2026. All right. Like I said, we'll be flipping the gears to NBA Monday. Have Keith Smith on here to break down a bunch of variety of things. Certainly some upcoming contracts, but also this gambling disaster that isn't really as big as it could be. And hopefully we don't get something bigger than this. I think that the Tim Donaghy referee gambling on game situation was much more dangerous to the integrity of the game than what we've seen so far in this documentation. But it's a big story. It's a national story. It's a loaded story. And we'll get as many of Keith's thoughts as he's willing to give us on Monday's episode of the Spotrac podcast. Download the app, visit betteredge.com, use code Spotrac for $20 off. Check out these pieces on Spotrac.com right now, including the trade machine for the upcoming NFL trade deadline. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Giannetti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spotrac podcast.